Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Politics Unleashed podcast. I'm Danny Haken, and along with Chris, Michelle Badalek, and Jesse Watson, we've got the whole crew here for you today. Like and subscribe, share, tell us what you'd like us to unleash on next. It really helps us with the algorithm, but we also like to hear your feedback and your questions. Today, we're going to be talking about some international matters, the Somali fraud or alleged fraud in Minnesota. There's going to be some debate about that around the table, as well as, of course, everyone's talking about it. What just happened in Venezuela, and what is that going to mean going forward? So, first things first, what's happening in Minnesota that Nick Shirley found? Michelle, how about you start us off? Because I know you're strong on this one.
Okay, well, Nick Shirley is a young journalist, and honestly, this guy is so impressive. He's doing more work than all of the main news agencies put together. So he linked up with a guy, I believe his name is David, I forgot his last name, and he lives in that area. And he compiled a list of all of these daycares and healthcare centers. And they had no one inside of those. They went to each single one to check if there's actually kids attending these, and no, there aren't. And these agencies are all receiving millions and millions of dollars each year to provide services. But these kids are non-existent, and it's funny because the other day, I think it was like 2 days ago, Nick Shirley was there, and they're like, "You see, there's kids," and you could tell it was the workers or the owners themselves that brought their kids and maybe friends of theirs just to save face, because we all saw those buildings. They were unoccupied, and they were very hostile too, because he said, can I have a form for little Joey, like we want to sign up for this daycare, and they just refused him at every single location. No one was even willing to entertain it or give him a form or tell him to go check out a website. Hell, even one of the signs for the daycares, it wasn't even spelled right. Like, they're not even trying that hard. It's just, but again, the government over there is turning a blind eye to it because they're all benefiting from this. The Democrats are pocketing a lot of this money as well, because when you look at Ilhan Omar's net worth, I believe she was making, what was it, $45,000 a year, and now she's at how many millions of dollars?
30.
That's insane. $30 million. It's not like she's a celebrity or anything like that, or runs a huge organization. She's just a politician.
Wait, Michelle, you're saying that American politicians pocket large amounts of money? Unheard of.
I know, right? But this one is very, very corrupt. And anyways.
Chris?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting in that when you learn about this, it's actually, there's been ongoing kind of fraud cases and investigations for a while that the American authorities have had ongoing. I mean, they had essentially a fake autism network where they were paying people to get diagnosed with autism, to the point that I think it was 1 in 5 Somali children in Minneapolis were found to be diagnosed with autism. And then they were essentially starting fake autistic treatment facilities, and they were taking the money from the government. They were billing them for the maximum amount allowable per child. And then they were allegedly, I don't even know if it's alleged at this point because the cases are in court, were pocketing the money and giving the parents kickbacks without actually rendering any services. And there were really no autistic children to begin with. Or if there were autistic children, they certainly weren't getting any treatment for their autism. And there are other ongoing cases that are being prosecuted over essentially fake home healthcare services where they're supposed to go help disabled people. And again, they just sign someone up in their community, and then they don't provide any actual services, send out fraudulent invoices, and collect the money. And it seems like these daycares are kind of an extension of these other fake businesses providing services that we've identified previously. And what Nick Shirley did is he went around to these daycares, and the neighbors say they never see anyone going in and out of the daycares, no kids, and
The hours of operation are 2 to 10 p.m.
Yeah, they're 2 to 10. So if you show up there at 11 or 2 or whatever it is, they should be open.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a daycare. If you go there between the hours of like 9 and 5, you would generally expect the daycare to be in operation on a weekday because people are at work, which is why you put kids in daycare. So he goes there, the windows are all covered with black tape, the doors are all locked. When he speaks to anyone at one of these businesses, no one's interested in getting clients, which seems strange for a business in and of itself. I mean, even if you went to like a daycare in Edmonton and you spoke to someone there, they might say they're full, but they would give you an application and say we have a waiting list.
Right.
And, because they still do want business.
Mhm.
And it's the same thing. There's like 2 daycares in our neighborhood. I've driven past them lots of times at various times of the day, and you can see kids outside or you can see people coming and going from the business. It's not like this is, it's unusual to see children in and around a daycare center. No, you usually would see some signs of activity there, but instead, these places are just clearly fronts.
Mhm.
I mean, there doesn't appear to be anyone there. There's no one coming and going from them. You don't see any kids. You don't see anywhere for kids to play in their vicinity
Right.
either. And they're in these weird industrial areas, and they're essentially locked tight as a drum. And, there doesn't seem to even be a lot of effort having been put into making them appear like authentic businesses. So
Well,
it's,
sorry, one of them also had overhead costs, according to their filings, overhead costs of $300,000, but they received $1 million.
Mhm. Yeah, again, it's quite rampant, the corruption. And I will say within that community, because it's overwhelmingly in that community, okay? And the problem with it is not only just fraud, but you're taking away services from actual kids that do need help. And, seniors or adults that do have disabilities that genuinely need that care. But also, some of that money is being funneled into Somalia to Al Shabaab, okay, which is a terrorist organization. So it is a very, very serious issue for multiple reasons. So it's not racist to say that, oh, we should probably keep an eye on this community. It's looking at the statistics and the evidence right in front of your eyes. You would have to be stupid not to acknowledge that there's a systemic issue within that group. And I'm not saying all, but for example, when we're looking at welfare numbers, it's very much abused in that community. Okay, so what was it here? This is from. Okay, here we go. 2023. Okay, so it's showing you that 81% of Somali households in that area, they were on some sort of welfare. 81%. That's an insane number. So if all of these people, they either don't want to work and they're on welfare, because the likelihood of all of them being like physically or mentally disabled where they can't work is impossible at that rate. Okay. It's not like there's something wrong with their genetic pool. No, that's not the case. So 81% of them are on welfare. And then there's a good chunk of them that are committing these frauds. And it ruins it for the small percentage of them that are actually working so hard. They're getting an education. They're contributing to their society. So they really need to start policing themselves. But I don't know if that's possible because of the numbers.
Mhm.
It's the majority of them that are taking advantage of the system in some way or another.
I've got a question about policy, but Jesse, anything you want to jump in with?
No, I think everything's been captured there.
Okay.
Mhm.
So, Chris, you mentioned that there was legal proceedings and actual charges that were brought in the late 2018, 2019.
Yeah, I mean, there was also a trial about like a food program that went on during COVID where essentially you had it was in place of like these school meal programs because children weren't going to school. They wanted to have out of school meal programs to feed needy children. So you had some nonprofit organization by this one white lady and her Somali boyfriend essentially set up where they were declaring that they were feeding thousands of children a day and millions of meals over a 4 or 5 year period, and they basically didn't do any of it, and they just pocketed all the money. And that's been an ongoing case, and I think she was convicted.
Yeah, I mean, imagine how many families that are struggling could have taken advantage of those programs,
Sure.
but instead
Well,
they never existed.
it's $250,000 they siphoned off in that case, and that's a lot of money. I mean, that's enough to build an entire school or several.
Sorry,
As
you
the
say
case may
quarter of a million or quarter of a billion?
sorry, $250,000,000.
There
It was
we go.
actually $250,000,000. I mean, you could build multiple schools with that amount of money. That's a substantial chunk of change. And like the amount of money these daycare centers, which don't appear to have been doing anything, they were taking like, a million here, 3 million there, and so forth. I even read a case about, I don't know if it was in Minnesota or an adjacent state, but allegedly there were two sisters who each had 4 kids, and they both set up a daycare. And their daycares were exclusively to look after each other's
Holy
kids.
shit.
And because of the fact that the government then was funding each of them as a separate stay-at-home daycare, they were then getting $35 an hour to look after each one of the other sister's kids. So instead
I'm
of
going to
two,
open up a
instead of
daycare.
two broke girls, looking after their kids at home,
Yeah.
they set themselves up as daycares and started getting paid to look after each other's children. It's absurd. I mean, the amount of abuse that's going on with some of these programs we're hearing about in the States is almost mind-boggling. It's just millions and billions of dollars of graft.
I don't know why I'm doing a doctorate when I can just open up a daycare and just become a millionaire. I'm really screwing myself over. I really need to rethink my career
Mistakes have
plan.
been made.
Yes,
Absolutely.
many.
So that a lot of what you're saying, Chris and Michelle, a lot of this sounds like it's failure of policy and oversight, obviously.
Yes, but it's also the people themselves, right? They have to also take some accountability too, but they should have never really been considered, because when you look at the list of how each country is ranked based on corruption, they're all the way on the dead bottom, like, of that list. Okay, so that says something about their culture. If it's mainly revolving around piracy and corruption, you probably don't want to have those kinds of people here. And if you do, you need to actually vet them out properly, make sure that they're actually going to contribute to society, that they have similar value systems, instead of just allowing people to just come in just because.
Well, it really seems like the Somalis looked at the Nigerians and the Indians and their reputation for successful scamming, and the Somalis got together and said, "I am the captain now."
Yeah, except that those actual people from those countries, a lot of them work very, very hard. Okay, they open up businesses, they're educated, they make sure that their children are educated. I know several Nigerian doctors and lawyers, politicians even. They are so hardworking. So, but that's a problem. These ones are usually on welfare. That's the issue. So it's not racist. You can't say like, oh, you're racist towards black people. Nigerians are black? Like, what are you talking about?
But I'm still going to put some blame on the government because, first of all,
Yes, they need to do a better job.
they can't, and I believe our own government should be, I think there's definitely something to be said about our own federal
Oh, yeah,
government. They do not
absolutely.
presume that everyone is innocent, because otherwise government programs wouldn't be defrauded if everyone was innocent. So you have to presume that everyone's out for something, that you have to close every loophole. But how could something go on that long and no one look at it and go, I think there's a problem here?
Well,
Because it's honestly, it's the Democrats, right? And it's the liberals here. It's people on the left that are using virtue signaling to get people to ultimately take advantage of a system. That's pretty much what it is. Like over here, we've accepted so many people for asylum status that have claimed to be gay. Okay, so they're taking advantage of this label, this protected minority label, and they're claiming that they're gay, yet they have families and they come over here with their families to seek asylum. Like, it's insane. The left is just, all they do is virtue signal.
So that instance there, where is that taking place?
The gay asylums?
Yeah.
Here in Canada.
No, but where? Like Ontario, Quebec?
It's all over. I mean,
There's been like you can go on YouTube and you
Yeah.
can check people interviewing,
Yeah.
and they're seeking gay asylum, and then they word split and they say, "Oh, my wife," and stuff
Right.
like that, and but
Right.
they're actually here on a gay asylum.
Right.
Now,
So asylumers, they get spread out throughout Canada.
Look, I married an immigrant
Mhm.
who we had to prove that we were actually a couple. And back in the day, you actually would have people knock on your door and prove you were a couple. Nowadays, it's like, show a picture of us together at the restaurant and you're a gay couple. But at the end of the day, if you're going to come here, it doesn't matter, gay, whatever,
Yeah.
you should have some accountability
Right.
to follow through and actually
Yeah.
demonstrate what you're achieving. Right?
Exactly.
Well, that's the problem with all of these kind of fraudulent things. We used to actually expect the government to go out and try and verify that work was being done, that invoices were authentic, and that real services were being provided. But now it seems a lot of cases, shoddily submitted paperwork is just accepted without being questioned, particularly if there's some danger of you being called a racist if you actually try and verify whether it's legit. And secondly, I mean, there seems to be a number of instances, even if the bureaucracy is saying, well, this is all bullshit and fraudulent, the political people are saying yes, but it's very politically convenient, which is what the accusation is in Minnesota, that the bureaucracy is out there saying, we told you about this and you didn't want to do anything about it. And eventually the FBI started getting involved. So it's kind of a scandal in that it seems like I think I did read something where they were reporting that there were an extraordinarily large number of Somali daycares which were making political donations in the United States. So you wonder if that might have something to do with why the Democratic establishment in Minneapolis and Minnesota weren't really interested in investigating these things too closely.
I mean, you saw the mayor of Minneapolis dancing on a stage with a Somali flag.
Mhm.
Well, they even made their own
Right.
flag look like the Somali flag.
Exactly.
It's
It
bizarre.
closely resembles it.
I think there's going to be there's going to be top-down administration. Like a lot of people might be held to account on this one because I think it's so out there that you can't deny it. Somebody needs to be hung up,
Right.
but it's
And
going to be politicians, administration, bureaucracy.
Yep.
Like there's people internally enriching themselves.
Absolutely.
Americans, of course, right? Like it's not just the Somalis here.
right. So thank God Trump is the president because he's going to make sure that happens. Because if Nick Shirley had exposed this during Joe Biden's presidency, nothing would have been done. Absolutely nothing. It would have been swept under the rug so fast. But now his YouTube video has reached like how many millions of people? I think it's like 100 million at least. So, but it's quite unfortunate because he is receiving death threats now, and people are calling him racist and this and that. I'm like, he's one of the kindest journalists out there. He's a timid man. He's not very aggressive. He's not aggressive at all. And he's just trying to pursue truth because ultimately the real victims of this are the people that need help and the taxpayers.
It's interesting also the framing of the media. So CNN found Nick Shirley, interviewed him, and they're like, are you 100% real? Like, are you 100% true?
100% true.
And he just looks at the camera and goes, yeah, I'm 100% true. It's like, well, I'm going to find this stuff, and then you get to do your own research. You basically almost calling out the media. You get to do your own research.
Right.
You get to find out what's real. And it is interesting that when the mainstream media's supremacy as the source of information is ever challenged by regular people, kind of like what we're trying to do, that, we're not big enough. We're not relevant enough to be targeted.
And we're not really investigating.
Well, not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. I've got one for you. But why not, right? But the thing is, the average person starts putting together a YouTube channel, doing some investigation, wanting to hold someone to account, and then what happens? The question of their integrity. How do we know that you're an honest person? Why are you doing this? When the question of, well, why shouldn't we all be upset at fraud?
Or if you're curious about it, go look for the information yourself. You don't have to believe me. You don't owe me anything, but just look into it yourself. And it's quite sad that this is the case in most countries where they politicize issues and they kind of make you go against the opposite side just for the sake of doing so. That shouldn't be the case because everyone is being disserviced by this.
Yeah. Chris, last word before we move on.
Well, it's rather telling that some of these mainstream media outlets are trying to essentially fact check Nick Shirley as opposed to investigating
Right?
whether these daycares actually exist. I mean, one of them ran a story saying, well, we went there and we couldn't find any of them open either, but we called all the ones he went to. One of them answered and told us, no, no, we're totally legit daycare. So he must be wrong. I which is crazy. Like you called an alleged fraudster, asked them, "Are you a fraud?" They said no, and you're like, "Well, they must not be a fraud then."
Yeah.
There is that manager though, the best video, right? The 15-year-old manager who's like, they broke in
Oh,
through the cinder block wall and they stole our paperwork, which had everybody's names on it,
right? Okay.
And our employee records.
and our employee records.
Right.
Like,
I'm like, who the hell would want that? They wouldn't take money or some sort of like computers, stuff that they could sell. And the guy was wearing $2,500 glasses. That's American. So that's what, about like 4,000 Canadian. I didn't even know eyeglasses were that expensive. The most mine have ever been was maybe like $600 or $700. So he's just balling out.
We have good eyesight, so we don't have to worry.
No,
No, he actually doesn't.
I have contacts on right
Yeah.
now, but
Yeah. We both have bad eyes, but my eyes are the
yours
worst.
are way worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. But okay, so he's got very expensive eyeglasses, and
Allegedly, the only thing the thieves were interested in this business are records that would suggest they're actually a business.
they broke through a cinder block wall.
The
Yes.
way the damages were done was insane because I'm like, if you're gonna commit a fake crime, like at least like research it, do it properly because it was so badly done. You're like, why the fuck would they come through there? It was just
Did they break into this building after the guy was coming back from Subway?
I was going to say,
And say, this is MAGA country.
yeah. For those of you not getting that reference, just Google Juicy. That's Jussi small a. That was some Chicago fraud, which is still like chef's kiss. It's great.
mhm.
Yeah, it's where a guy paid to have himself assaulted by his friends
Yeah.
for clout.
Yeah. And then, interestingly enough, was found, caught, and the police were angered that he was let go, and there was no charges. But that's what happens when you're friends with the establishment.
That's right.
Our next segment, as you're probably aware, Venezuela. I don't even know how to frame it, but a long story short, the president of Venezuela was taken in a midnight raid, and he and his wife were bundled up, captured, and taken to New York. So I don't even know where to begin with this one because I
he was
know
illegally kidnapped.
Mm.
no. Well, actually, that's so. So
That's
looking
actually what people are saying online.
Well, looking into it, so in our last episode, we talked about the fact that international law only works because we all agree that it works, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, international law is a fiction. It's a polite fiction.
right. So,
It's really what it is. I mean, because why are we upset that some guy who supposedly he was illegally in office to begin with?
Mhm.
Because the international community agrees he did not win his last election. In fact, by all reports, he supposedly lost by almost a 2-to-1 margin in as long ago
Canada
as
even agreed to that.
2018.
Trudeau
Yeah,
agreed.
and I mean, he blocked people
And-
from actually seeking
This guy,
candidacy.
yeah, this guy was, actively starving his own people.
Yes.
He was running like a drug trafficking empire out of Venezuela. And this government before that basically stole their oil industry from investors from the US and the UK.
Yeah.
So basically, he's sitting on an industry which was stolen through expropriation, where no compensation was paid. He was running a drug trafficking empire. He was illegitimately in power, having refused to leave office when his own people voted him out. He destabilized their economy to the point where he was starving people and sent waves of refugees to all over, the North America, South America,
Central.
and Central America. because he was basically an incompetent, brutal, and awful thug who is apparently not good at doing anything other than peddling dope. So, I mean, the fact that this guy got, renditioned in the middle of the night after the U.S. went in and took out their air defenses, knocked down their defenses, kicked in the door, and nabbed him. I mean, it's unqualifiedly a good thing. I mean, Venezuela deserves to have, a free and open democracy and an open economy where you can actually make a living again. And instead, they've essentially had this weird narco-terrorist socialist dictatorship for going on, 15 years now. That's made it it's taken it from the richest country in South America to the poorest.
Yeah.
It's essentially shown how the evils of socialism are an affliction upon any free people. So, I mean, hopefully this is the start of a turnaround for Venezuela.
Yeah. So, sorry. So for our viewers, Venezuela at one point was one of the richest, most prosperous nations in South America, Central America. And then Hugo Chavez came to power, where his big thing was expropriate it all, essentially nationalize everything, which I believe led to a $1.6 billion settlement to the oil companies that had infrastructure down there. Not that they got any money, right? Because, of course, it was proven to be wrong, that what Chavez did was wrong and against agreed international law. Didn't care. Chavez dies, Maduro comes to power, more of the same. I remember images of his people struggling to eat while there he is with Salt Bay enjoying, a massive tomahawk steak and a cigar. So if you ever want to see an out-of-touch leader, dictators usually are. But to give it some more context, as much as, and I've seen the videos, as much as white liberals are upset about what happened and the sovereignty of this nation and blah, blah, blah. Look at the Venezuelans.
Happy.
Look at the people within the country and the diaspora that left the country. Overwhelmingly, they are overjoyed by what happened. So frankly, I think the opinion of a non-Venezuelan should count for 25% of an actual opinion, because...
Not even that.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. You can say whatever you want, but the point is the people are happy. There's going to be some change. And I think that what's going to come from this is that Trump will have 100% support of the Venezuelan people and its transitional government. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. He's also asked that oil companies go back in and rebuild the infrastructure, but many of them want to hold off on that because it's going to cost so much to do it.
Right.
And
it's unstable.
And it's unstable because the transitional government could collapse, in which case then you're back to where you started.
Right. And I just want to touch on that, the transitional government. A lot of people are kind of misinformed about that. And they keep saying, oh, now the U.S. is completely in power and this and that, they're going to take over. No, it's just temporarily until they can have a democratic election like they deserve to have.
Or they might install the people that everyone says should have won that election.
I hope that they do that.
Right? Because technically those people...
That's what they wanted.
If world leaders and if world government said, this Maduro election, he didn't win, it's fraudulent, these people won, well, then install them as the leaders. Yeah. But before going into getting some details on what it might mean for Canada going forward, Jesse, is there anything you wanted to ask?
No, I think they captured it all.
Oh? Well, how about this? How do you feel about it?
Oh, I just... I think everyone's up in arms because I think it's really the only democratic country that has, essentially turned into a dictatorship. All the other countries that we tend to evade, we being the West, tend to be authoritarian, right? Iran, Iraq, all these places. But Venezuela is such a unique circumstance, right? It was a democratic, and then he took over the production of land, took over everything, and then it became a communist, socialist country. And so I think, there's rallies right now in Edmonton against what's happening. And Michael Jans, for example, one of the councillors is at the rally advocating for it.
Wait, they want Venezuelans to continue to not be able to have a voice and to starve? That's what they want?
That's
what happened.
Are they batshit crazy?
I know,
you have to be a monster to say, I love to watch people starve.
Hands off Venezuela.
I love that. Hands off Venezuela. That's the problem. They think that they're attacking the actual Venezuelan people. No, we're taking out We took out 2 fucking people to send out a message so that the rest of the country can be saved. This is insane.
That's
the
why
gaslighting is insane.
That's why I say, if you're not a Venezuelan, your opinion is 25% of that of one of them, because what you say is irrelevant. All these people going to that protest saying, hands off Venezuela, this shouldn't happen. Okay, first of all, there could be an argument made under international law that because the UN did not pass a resolution, because that's the thing, right? What should happen is the UN passes a resolution, this is bad, something should be done, and then it's kind of like everyone looking around and saying who's actually going to be the one to pull the trigger.
But it's also about Congress, right? People are saying that Trump didn't have the authority of Congress.
He doesn't need it.
He's
though.
using the second, yeah. But this, I'm just saying, this is what people are saying. He's arguing he doesn't need it, but everyone else, the Democrats mostly are saying.
Well, I mean, but again, they've done stuff like that themselves where they didn't need the permission of Congress to do something. Every single president has been afforded that luxury. It's in their constitution to do so.
Well, what's the justification? You said he was narco-terrorism.
Well, there was an active warrant out for the arrest of Maduro as being head of a narco-terrorist syndicate, essentially, because FARC is basically in charge of the Venezuelan government. And they've been a terrorist and drug trafficking organization for decades. So there was an active warrant out for his arrest. So it's entirely lawful that they've apprehended Maduro and are taking him to be put on trial in New York. They were parading him through New York, from what I can tell.
Right, especially because those crimes were committed also in America. Lots of drugs have been funneled through gangs and cartels. But the thing is, we shouldn't be upset about this at all. If Trump had actually sent multiple missiles throughout Venezuela and killed a bunch of civilians, then you can make stupid virtue signaling memes like that, hands off Venezuela. That's not what happened. It's the exact opposite. We're giving these people, these innocent people, a chance to have a somewhat normal life, that they actually have a voice, that they can elect who they want. They don't have to starve. Who wouldn't want that for humanity? It's insane.
Well, and this seems like it was the most pinpoint surgical strike that's been enacted in years, aside from when the Israelis blew up the genital area of all the members of Hezbollah by putting bombs in their pagers. So, I mean, this was a very targeted and strike where they basically took out military targets. I mean, from what it's worth, I hope the Venezuelans saved their receipts for all those Russian air defenses that were supposed to be so effective and which CNN was saying was going to prevent the Americans from being able to carry out any kind of strike because those got taken out relatively easily. And from what we've read, I mean, the Americans didn't even suffer a single casualty in the whole operation. They just came in, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, grabbed Maduro and were out. But it does send a tremendous message to anyone else in that country who's thinking of going back to the way things were done before. That, we can reach out and touch you with basically minimal problems. And we're still sitting out here in the ocean. So if you're not thinking about, getting things back to normal and carrying on, and you think you can carry on this little communist dictatorship that's peddling drugs in our country, you got another thing coming because, there's a cell right next to Maduro's that we can put you in with a minimum of muss and fuss. So, I think it's unqualifiedly a good thing, and it's bizarre to me how we see McPherson and Michael Jans crying about the fact Maduro is now sitting in a jail cell. I mean, he should be in a jail cell. I mean, he's a terrorist, he's a drug dealer, he sponsored Middle Eastern terrorism, he was organizing conferences for Antifa, who go around rioting throughout the United States.
All around the world, actually.
And, I mean, he was having his thugs assault his own people, and he was forcing them to eat cats and dogs to try and live. And he drove hundreds of thousands of refugees out of his own country. The whole thing was just an unmitigated disaster. But because he said he was a socialist, the NDP are wringing their hands and saying, oh, it's so sad what happened to him.
It was because they hate Trump.
Yeah, and they just don't want to reckon with the fact that every time someone has ever tried their socialist dream, It's ended in tremendous loss of life. It's ended in despotism, and it's ended in tears and misery and human suffering. Because socialism is fundamentally a stupid idea that's entirely contrary to human nature. We care about ourselves. We care about our friends. We care about our families. We may care a little bit about our neighbors, but complete strangers, we don't care about them. I mean, that's simply human nature. So the idea that we can socialize everything is just an absurd dream that has no real basis in reality. As a theory, it's just a political fantasy. I mean, it's like claiming that the real solution to humanity's problems is elves. I mean, it's made up, it's nonsense, and it never works. So the NDP are simply crying because another one of their flag carriers of their made-up fantasy has gone down in flames, and he deserved it. I hope he goes to jail or he gets fried or whatever the Americans are going to do to him for those particular charges.
He deserves
because he
a death
deserves everything that comes to him. He's a horrible human being. He's one of the worst people on earth, and I hope he suffers immensely.
And this message is not only to the people in Venezuela that might think of, taking Maduro's place in the future, but Trump said a month ago he's keeping his eyes on Cuba, so they need to be very, very careful.
I thought it was a nice touch, though, that they bombed Chavez's tomb. Yeah, no, they sent a missile and they bombed it. They blew it to smithereens.
Okay.
The little mausoleum they built for him.
Well, I wonder what the next knock-on effect is going to be. So there might be some economic consequences of this, and I mean for Canada. So I'll give my 2 cents on it. So if you're not aware, Canada produces heavy oil, which most of the U.S. refineries are geared towards taking that heavy bitumen, refining it, processing it. It's costly, but that's what they have access to. In 1988, 1999, Venezuela actually provided more oil to the U.S. than Canada did. But then post-2020, Canada, as of last year, supplied the U.S. with 60% of the heavy oil that it receives from imports around the world. However, now that they're going to be theoretically rebuilding Venezuela, they're going to have their support. It should also be noted that at current production rates, Venezuela has 800 plus years of productive capacity. They have the largest proven oil reserves in the world. And I would argue that because of the access to the U.S. ports, that this is going to be a major issue, that Canada needs to figure out this trade deal and get on this. Because right now, yes, we ship 80% of our oil to the U.S., but if they're rebuilding and looking after Venezuela, if they can find someone to put the money into the infrastructure, and it will take years, all of this stuff does, it's going to give the U.S. cheap oil closer to the refineries, but it also has a secondary effect. Who is it that bought most of the oil out of Venezuela?
China.
80% of Venezuela's production was sold to China. And so if the regime manages to survive, and by regime I mean the provisional government, if it manages to survive, one of the likely outcomes from Forbes is that China will negotiate 40 to 50 cents on the dollar for oil, which is more than what they were paying Maduro, but less than it's more than they were paying Maduro, but less than they were probably hoping to get. But the thing is, what's going to happen there is that China's going to be looking for its oil reserves, because it's really going to become I believe it's going to become a power imbalance between the U.S. and China, right? And there's some people who've said that we're going to enter a hot war in the next 5 years because of the fact that the U.S. is trying to maintain dominance, China wants dominance, and this kind of supports the U.S. maintaining its petrodollar support. So my question for everyone around the table is, given that it's likely going to be 3 to 4 years if they really devote time, how screwed is Canada if Venezuela doesn't become the major supporter of or provider to the U.S. of its oil reserves? What's likely to happen?
Well, I think the difficulty is we don't really know what's going to happen in Venezuela either. I mean, if you had your entire oil operation in Venezuela ripped off, you're probably not super keen on going back there anytime soon, because while it looks okay maybe now, or it seems promising, I mean, say what you want about investing your money into Canada or the US or some other nations which have oil reserves, the government didn't just steal everything from you in the past. I mean, you may be tearing your hair out in Canada about being buried in kind of a Kafkaesque bureaucratic maze to try and build everything, but you don't think at the end of the day the Canadian government is going to steal your entire investment, which is a huge concern in Venezuela because, I mean, even if we put in a new government, how stable is any government in South America? That's kind of a long-term problem with all these second and third world countries. That you convince people to come in and make a huge investment. There's always kind of this looming risk of the loss of your entire investment because it can be overthrown by some military junta who comes in promising socialism or whatever other program that they happen to be wedded to. And it's a realistic problem.
Yeah.
I mean, you see it in Africa as well, where the instability of the country and the regime is kind of a barrier to economic development. So that's probably not going away in Venezuela, which is probably a barrier to them really displacing us as an oil producer. And the fact their facilities are kind of 25 years out of date or
They are
whatever.
very dilapidated and need
And
updating.
here in Alberta, you see them shutting down every year for maintenance. When do you think the last time they had a maintenance shutdown in Venezuela was?
Well, that's what I mean by if they're serious about it, they're gonna first off, assurances have to be made. And I think there's again, Forbes did an analysis, and they found that likely be a 30 if the provisional government fails, it's a 30% likelihood that it would fail, and then any investment that's done would be immediately just consumed. So if it could happen, if there was stability, that's why I say 4 or 5 years out, it means now there's competition for Canadian crude. Michelle?
So this is all the more reason why we need to get our pipelines removed and remove all of those environmental restrictions and all of the bullshit that the liberals have put on us.
Remove the pipelines.
The bills,
Right.
Oh,
the anti-pipeline bills,
right.
I think she means.
So we need to approve these pipelines ASAP because the East is actually they're importing oil from other countries.
Saudi Arabia.
There's no excuse to be importing oil from corrupt nations, by the way, when we have perfectly good oil here that's ethically sourced and it's environmentally sound, right? It's not traveling on boats where it could leak into the ocean, and that's a huge issue, right? And it's not going to be on some sort of rail, right? Like Lac Megantic when it blew up. It's underground. It's so clean. It's so precise. It doesn't affect with the environmental flora around it. So we need to approve those right away so that we don't have to rely on anyone else, because I feel it in my gut. Something is going to happen.
Yeah. I could ask him for information, but regarding Lac Megantic. So yeah, what happened there, a friend of mine actually worked for CN Rail, and he's like, we want to know what actually happened there. So diesel trains catch fire. They just do.
Yeah.
But guess what? It goes out. It doesn't matter. So the engineer and the conductor, they parked the train where it was. They left it running, caught fire. Someone reported it. Firefighters go out, and they're like, well, what's going on here? They put it out, but they're like, you got to shut off the engine. So what happens is they get someone to come in, shut off the engine, but that engine was providing power to the brakes. So then they activate the emergency brakes. The problem is the emergency brakes aren't designed to hold all the weight. Mm-hmm. So what happens in the middle of the night? They go. And now a train full of oil and full of combustible material plows right into the yard in the refinery, and it goes up in smoke. Who gets blamed? The rail company. Who doesn't get blamed? The firefighters. Because God forbid you accuse these people they do a hard job, and whether they're heroes or not, the point is...
And also their expertise, their scope of practice is usually limited to like residential and businesses, right? Like they're not used to stuff like that.
Yeah, before shutting off anyone's equipment, they probably should have reached out to someone at CN, a director or some VP, and be like, hey,
correct,
what do we do here? And they would have been told, don't touch it.
Yeah.
Leave it alone. But anyway, that's just some information on that one, because it was just kind of fascinating. Jesse, how about you?
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be an immediate impact. I'm kind of with Chris on that one. I just think mobilizing down there is going to take decades
It will.
potentially. Will it light a fire to build a pipeline? It might. But I think overall, like the US, I look at this and the price of crude is traded in US. But in the last 2, 3 years, the BRICS, the countries have started to trade among themselves. And so I think like yes, it's to remove a dictator, but yes, it also is to control the means of production. And I think there's an ulterior motive here by the US
Oh,
to,
obviously, I have no
take
doubt that
advantage.
they're not going to capitalize on
But,
it. Absolutely.
just just kind of hold their dominance and power, and it is what it is.
Yeah, the U.S. obviously doesn't like the fact that China is apparently trying to essentially uh, influence and control these jurisdictions in South America that are, for all intents and purposes, in their own backyard, like whether it's Panama or Venezuela or any of these other smaller kind of South American countries. But with respect to what actually threatens our ability to export oil at a relatively decent price, I think a changing of the Iranian regime probably could potentially have a lot more impact on that. Because if these protests are successful in overthrowing the Iranian Ayatollah and the whole Islamic State regime, it's a lot easier to get light sweet crude being exported en masse in a hurry because of the fact, all you got to do is drill a hole. And, as the Beverly Hillbillies said, and up from the ground comes the bubbling crude. There's a lot less work for all intents and purposes. So that could be scaled up relatively quickly. I mean, at the same time, Iran's got all kinds of other problems with the lack of water and food and everything else.
Well, because they spent so much time and money
on terrorism,
funding Hezbollah and Hamas, and
yeah, God willing, the Iranian people do throw off their oppressors because it would be one of the best things that could happen to kind of world stability because Iran's been trying to basically cause problems for the rest of the world since they've been in there since 1980.
Yeah.
But if you want to say something that could really depress the price of oil, it would be Iran getting its act together and being interested in civilian, economic projects and exporting oil because, if we have a new government and the Shah comes back, they have a democratic government, there'd be no reason for any sanctions on Iran. So could have effectively, relatively quickly flood the oil market.
And I hope that happens because, have you ever seen videos of Iran like in the 70s?
Pre-79, yeah.
They were so modern and happy and they had rights. It was a beautiful society. And now because of Sharia law, there's so much rampant oppression and corruption in that country. Just the other day on New Year's, a 12-year-old girl was outside celebrating and I couldn't see her family members. She didn't want to wear a hijab and hundreds of men were surrounding her and pushing her and beating her up. If you are a true liberal and you care about people, you wouldn't want this to happen. But I bet you when Trump handles the situation, I know he will, because he's the only one who actually takes his job fucking seriously, not like our joke of a prime minister. They're going to be up in arms. Oh, free Iran, free this. No, you're arguing for the exact opposite. They're actually trying to free Iran because they used to have such a prosperous and beautiful society.
Yeah, pre-79, before the revolution.
You could
walk like women were wearing like very Western, wearing dresses, not covering their heads, were able to go to school. It was the typical, this is how democracy succeeds. Aren't we happy with it?
They look like a Western society. Like if you just looked at how they dressed and acted, you wouldn't be able to decipher like, oh, was this in Miami or was this somewhere in Iran?
Right. And then 1979, the fundamentalists take over. There's the revolution, Ayatollah Khomeini. And then from then on since, it's been one of the most repressive and oppressive regimes possible. So what's really interesting is one of my friends posted, it's January 3rd. What a year it's been already.
I know. It's actually so insane because every day is a whole chapter in a history textbook.
Yeah.
What we're seeing right now is the stuff of dreams. This is very, very rare for all of these world events to happen at this rapid of a pace. It's kind of giving me whiplash.
Well, you commented previous episodes like we're in some kind of alternate timeline.
We are. This timeline's so
Nothing makes
weird.
sense.
I swear, since COVID started, I know this sounds very like it's tinfoil hattish, but since COVID, I feel like time has been going by so fast, and we're experiencing way more catastrophic events than what is usually on par for just like what would happen in a year for us would have happened like over a decade. It's
Seems
very
like-
weird.
Seems like major pivotal world events are happening way too fast, way too often.
Yeah, I think CERN has something to do with it. We're going to have an episode dedicated to CERN.
But it's kind of wild that there's a realistic prospect that in Venezuela they're going to be building like statues of Trump, just as Poland has statues of Reagan, as long as this all kind of works out over the next months.
Mm-hmm.
Because, he's basically helped them throw off a repressive dictatorship, which is why they're all celebrating in the streets. I mean, to the horror of Michael Jans.
Yeah.
John, someone get him a book.
Well, Jesse, do you want a final word on that one?
Yeah,
Nope,
I don't
nope,
want
I
my
think that was
statement
the
to be
final
the
word.
final
That was
word,
final
please.
word? Okay. Well, thank you everyone for sticking around and watching some international topics. Like I said, it's way too much, way too fast.
Yeah.
But it's certainly going to be, it's the fourth day of 2026.
It's enough slices.
And we've already experienced potential regime change and regime change.
Yes.
My name's Danny Hakinen.
Chris Battleluck.
Michelle Badalek.
Jesse Watson.
Thanks for joining us again. Like, share, subscribe, and comment. Let us know what you want us to unleash on next.